Mic check, mic check. Hello, mic check. Just testing out the mic real quick. Mic check. Hello, mic check. Okay, okay. Well, first of all, just to clarify, I will not be doing these midnight streams like that. But I figure I'd get this out the way to let my viewers know, that I am back doing live streams, but I'm doing it a little bit different. Also, to my new streamers, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Ken Justin Creations. I do a lot of educational videos on how to draw, particularly concept art, manga work, concept artwork for backgrounds and character designs. So if that's for you, welcome to this channel. And also throughout this live stream, I will get into the introduction of what you will learn throughout this concept art series and also as well as for those who are wondering why I was when I was absent or on a hiatus. If you see my post, I was doing an interview with someone that wanted me to be on a special guest to educate some artists and also some creative writers as well. So be on the lookout for that. Make sure you hit the notification button and subscribe. So with that being said, let me transition to the next scene, and I'll see y'all there. Sure, this is not in the way. Okay. I'm just making sure all of you can see this. This is my portfolio sample of the concept art, and this is actually what you will be learning throughout this series. This is something that you will be learning throughout this series, but this time it will be different. Within 3 weeks, I will teach you the basics and fundamentals of creating your concept art backgrounds, such as two-point perspective. I will teach you how to utilize your line work, as well as creating your brushes if you want to create scenery, vegetation, and of course like oceans on top of that. And we can't forget about the cloud brushes. So I will teach you the basics and fundamentals of stuff like that within 3 weeks. Then within the fourth week, I'm going to move the advanced techniques to my Patreon account, which is in the link in the description box below. So keep that in mind. All right. Now, now that we got that out the way, as you can see, this is my portfolio sample. These two scenes are from my comic series, Chaos Extraction, which I highly recommend you go check out. As well as this is also a portfolio piece of a castle illustration I did a couple years ago for a client. And may I say, this was actually one of my best design. This is actually one of my best commissions because in the beginning stages, a little bit of story behind it. In the beginning stages, this was actually one of my first big commissions next to storyboard commission work. And the fact that I had to crank out like so many illustrations within a span of a week, it stands as one of my biggest achievements because I was able to create this detail with a couple techniques and shortcuts that I've learned, which I'm about to get into. And just to clarify, I'm going to keep this short because it's already late. So, pardon me for the late live stream. Usually I live stream around 9 o'clock. But with that being said, let's get into it. Okay, why why for starters we need to get into references. Now, why is reference vital? References reduces the cognitive load. Designing an environment requires solving perspective. Hold on, let me get this out of the way. All right, let me start over. Why, for starters, we're gonna get started with references. So, why reference is vital? It reduces, there we go. It reduces the cognitive load. Designing an environment requires solving perspective scale, lighting, and composition simultaneously. References supply the raw factual data, allowing the artist to focus entirely on creative interpretation and storytelling. So when you're creating so when you're creating your art pieces, whether it's backgrounds or characters, do not feel like you're under pressure where everything is 100% creative, where you have to be 100% creative. It's just through imagination. But no, like let me clarify. It definitely takes a lot of imagination to create these art pieces that you will be making. But don't be shy to utilize references to, how do I say this, upscale it, to help you get to your creative vision for your art piece. I figured I'd throw that in. And next, it builds a visual library. No artist memorizes the exact way light refracts through dirty glass or how moss grows on specific tone. Gathering references expands an artist's personal knowledge base for future projects. It excuse me. Now, it maintains production consistency in professional pipelines. Environment concept art serves as a blueprint for 3D modelers, and texture artists. So, so that also carries another reason why concept art is important. It's truly important for 3D modelers and texture artists. And I'll go as far as to say it's really important if you're a manga artist or anime, well, or you're excuse me, a visual development artist when you work on your animations. Okay, now, real world references ensure the scale, like a door height relative to a human, remains accurate and functional for the rest of the team. Always take that into consideration when you create your concept art. Next, avoids plagiarism through blending. Professional concept artists rarely copy a single image. Instead, they mix 5 to 20 different images using one for the sky color, another for architectural trim, and a third for the ground texture to synthesize a completely unique location. Now, as what I've just read, when you create your concept artwork, it goes back to what I said about utilizing the references for your concept art pieces. When you gather all your images, make sure you use certain elements from that image to flesh out your art piece. That way it will feel 100% original. That way it will feel original. Excuse me. Okay. Hopefully I explained that part. Now, now let's get into what you will learn in this session, in this course. All right. 2D custom shape silhouette, the high impact ideation. Now, psychology of shape language. Using sharp triangles to communicate danger, solid rectangles for defensive stability, and smooth curves for non-threatening elements. In other words, what they mean by the shape language, when you when you start creating your thumbnails, which I will actually get into later on throughout my future live streams, but when they mean by the shape language, they're talking about the buildings or the rocks the grass. In other words, there's going to be a technique I will teach all of you later on throughout this session on how you can create custom shapes, how you can utilize the custom shapes and incorporate it into your concept art backgrounds. Now, the silhouette read test, verifying character or prop legibility at a distance by focusing strictly on negative space and clean outward graphic lines. So, they're referring to this silhouette right here. Hold on, excuse me. Let me get my pen real quick. When you create your silhouettes, mind you, this was just a quick mock-up. But when you create your silhouettes, use the grayscale method. Utilize the grayscale method when you incorporate the silhouettes for your backgrounds. So, as you can see here, there's only a few custom shapes I've used throughout this rough thumbnail. Now, after I'm finishing reading this off, I'm actually going to show you a completed version of this. Okay, now the digital kit bashing tools. Leveraging custom tool shape paths in Photoshop or Procreate to rapidly generate dense, complex backgrounds or tech forms in seconds. Okay, so this leads up to the final point. When you do digital kit bashing tools, they also excuse me, for concept art, they also use custom made brushes as well as they utilize photo textures to actually increase the detail of the characters' paintings. So let me open this. Let me see this. Okay, before we move on to the final part of this session, as you can see here, this is just a rough layout of my art piece. And as you can see on the right, this is the completed version. And this is what you will learn throughout my 4-week live stream sessions. I will teach how to utilize the photo textures. I will teach you how to use custom shapes to incorporate in your background, to incorporate it into your buildings or rocks. As well as I'll teach you how to use your brushes to create really detailed pictures. All right. Next up is the graybox method, the 3D scene foundations. Now, defining the graybox blockout using the primitive geometric geometry to stress test composition, readability, sight lines, and character to corridor proportions. Now, interesting fact: a lot of a lot of manga artists, especially webtoon artists, they actually utilize 3D scenes for when they create their comics, to create their comics or their manga. what one of the I believe I believe one of the web comics I've read, I think it's called Just a Goblin. They use they use a lot of 3D scenes for that one. And there was also another popular web comic I've got into as well, which I really got to catch up on, called Hero Killer, and they utilize 3D backgrounds with some editing and texture work, of course. They're able to integrate it into their scenes to make it feel authentic. It feels like it belongs in that setting. Next up, the scale anchors. Placing simple humanoid capsules or 3D character stands to ensure doors and halls retain believable and physical proportions. In other words, let's just say you have a 3D model figure already in play. Make sure you place it inside your scene to make sure all the proportions are correct. Next, the line of sight trick. Rotating and testing camera grids using composition systems like the rule of thirds before diving into loose line sketches. Okay, so so the rule of thirds is basically like a checkerboard that's in the middle of the drawing. Is in the middle of the drawing pieces. Is the middle of the drawing. Excuse me. Where everything is supposed to be aligned. It follows the guidelines. It's not out of place. That's why the rule of thirds are important, as well as perspective. As well as perspective is extremely important as well, which you will learn throughout this throughout this series. Okay, that's basically all for my slideshow. But pro tip, if you want to gather your references, make sure you make sure you can get it from Pinterest because there's a lot of cool references on there. And there's nothing wrong with utilizing AI per se. Just make sure you follow the I guess you gotta be careful because as you know, there are some artists that as you already know, some artists still get the artwork taken by AI, and you need to be careful what references you use. But I'd still recommend using Pinterest to gather your references for your future art pieces. Okay, that's gonna be all for tonight. Again, this is gonna be a short live stream because I wanted to get this out there. I wanted to show what I'm representing to y'all, and hopefully you enjoy this series. As well as and for some important updates right now, I am actually working on three chapters of my web comic series called Chaos Extraction, which I highly recommend you check out. Link in the description box below. And then on top of that, I'm also working on another how to draw ebook. In other words, I'm going to be working on the concept art series for backgrounds. But other than that, But other than that, again, I usually live stream at 9 o'clock p.m. So make sure you hit the notification bell. Make sure you hit a like, comment, subscribe if you are new, if you find value throughout this stream. And but with that being said, this is Ken Justin Creations signing out. God bless. Y'all be safe. Take care. Have a good night. With that being said, this is Ken Justin Creations signing out. God bless.